The day had begun with nothing more than the gentle hum of the waves and the whisper of the sea breeze. She had come to the shore seeking peace, bending down now and then to collect shells that shimmered like tiny pieces of the sky, scattered across the sand. Her hands moved delicately, her eyes tracing the soft outlines of each shell, searching for beauty in their imperfections. She wasn't thinking about competition or proving anything. Her world was quiet, reflective, and untouched by the noise of ambition. Little did she know that fate often disguises its grandest moments in the simplest beginnings. A few hundred meters away, a group of military men from the Special Forces were conducting a long-range shooting exercise. Among them was a sniper, known for his calm precision and unmatched aim. His gaze occasionally drifted toward the young woman by the shore, amused by her calmness in contrast to the tension of his training. When the exercise paused, he walked over, curiosity piqued by her presence. Their worlds couldn't have been more different, one shaped by discipline and danger, the other by quiet observation and wonder. Yet, as they stood facing each other, curiosity sparked something that neither could explain. "Ever tried shooting that far?" he asked, half teasing, gesturing toward the distant metal target that gleamed under the sun. She laughed softly, shaking her head, amused at the absurdity of the question. She had never held a sniper rifle in her life. "I bet you couldn't hit it from here," he said with a confident smirk, not to insult her, but to playfully challenge the calmness that intrigued him. Something in his tone stirred her. It wasn't arrogance, it was intrigue, and for reasons she couldn't quite explain, she found herself saying, "Maybe I could." As the rifle rested in her hands, the weight felt foreign yet oddly natural. The men around them chuckled, expecting nothing more than a clumsy attempt. But as she positioned herself, the beach seemed to fall silent. The waves hushed, the wind paused, and for a moment it was as if the world leaned in to watch. She remembered her father's old words about patience and focus, about seeing the stillness in chaos. She breathed deeply, aligning her eye with the scope, her heart steady. The sniper beside her watched closely, his playful grin slowly fading into astonishment at her composure. When the shot rang out, time seemed to freeze. The bullet soared across the air, cutting through the distance that separated the ordinary from the extraordinary. Then a faint metallic clang. The men stood speechless. She lowered the rifle, eyes wide, half in disbelief. The sniper blinked, trying to make sense of what just happened. He had seen experts miss that target, yet she, the girl who was simply picking up shells, had done the impossible. That was the moment curiosity became challenge, and challenge became revelation, a quiet reminder that sometimes greatness doesn't announce itself. It just takes a chance, breathes in deeply, and pulls the trigger. The air was still after the echo of the gunshot faded, yet something about that silence carried more weight than sound ever could. The sniper's trained eyes widened as the faint metallic clang confirmed what seemed impossible: the target had been hit. He blinked once, twice, certain his mind was playing tricks, but the spotter's scope didn't lie. The mark, exactly 294 meters away, had been struck dead center. For a brief moment, time itself seemed to hesitate, as if trying to process what had just occurred. The soldiers who had been laughing seconds ago now stood frozen, their expressions shifting from amusement to disbelief. The sniper, a man who had trained for years to master wind correction, bullet drop, and breathing control, suddenly found himself at a loss for words. His pride didn't allow him to be easily impressed, yet here he was, stunned not just by the precision of the shot, but by the calmness with which it had been made. She hadn't trembled, hadn't hesitated, hadn't overthought. While most shooters wrestled with calculations, she had simply trusted her instincts. To him, that was what made it even more extraordinary. It wasn't luck, it was presence, a kind of natural awareness that couldn't be taught in any military academy. As she stood there, lowering the rifle, the sea breeze caught strands of her hair, brushing them across her face. There was no sign of pride in her expression, only quiet astonishment. "Did I actually hit it?" she asked softly, her voice carrying the innocence of someone who didn't yet understand the magnitude of what she'd done. The sniper didn't respond immediately. He walked forward, scanning the distance through his scope again, confirming what his eyes already knew. Then he turned back to her, his smirk gone, replaced by something rare, respect. "You didn't just hit it," he said slowly. "You nailed it dead center." The other soldiers gathered around, muttering in disbelief, some even laughing nervously as though their minds couldn't accept the reality before them. Cameras were pulled out, scopes rechecked, but the outcome remained the same. The sniper felt something stir inside him, not jealousy, but admiration mixed with humility. He had spent years chasing perfection, learning the science of every shot. And yet this young woman, who moments ago was collecting shells by the water, had achieved something most professionals only dreamed of. In her, he saw something pure, a reminder of why he fell in love with marksmanship in the first place. Not for medals, not for rank, but for the magic of a perfect shot. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the sniper stood beside her once more, the golden light painting their silhouettes against the sea. "You know," he said quietly, almost as if confessing a secret, "that shot it would make headlines if anyone knew." She smiled faintly, her eyes still fixed on the distant target. "Let's keep it between us," she replied. In that moment, he realized that her humility was as sharp as her aim. The shot had stunned the sniper not because it defied physics, but because it reminded him that greatness often hides behind gentle hands and unassuming hearts. It was a moment that would echo in his memory forever, the day a quiet girl with seashells outshot a legend. Fate has a curious way of weaving its patterns, often invisible, until the moment they tighten into something unforgettable. For her, it had all begun as nothing more than a walk along the shore, the kind of day that feels too ordinary to matter. She was barefoot, the sun warm on her skin, the sea whispering stories only she could hear. Each seashell she picked was a small treasure, a memory of stillness. But destiny was already moving beneath the calm surface, quiet, patient, waiting for the right spark. It came not in thunder or prophecy, but in the casual words of a soldier who decided to make a playful bet. What began as a random encounter was about to alter the course of two lives forever. As the shot echoed and the impossible became real, something shifted between them, something neither of them could define. The sniper, once so certain of his mastery, now stood humbled before the kind of miracle that logic couldn't explain. And she, who had never sought recognition or challenge, now found herself standing in a moment too large for reason. It wasn't about the bullet, the distance, or the target anymore. It was about the connection that had formed in that suspended silence, the realization that two very different paths had collided not by coincidence, but by the subtle pull of fate. In the days that followed, the sniper couldn't shake the image of that moment. He found himself returning to the same stretch of beach half, hoping to see her again, not because of pride or curiosity, but because her calmness had stirred something inside him, something deeper than admiration. She had reminded him of something he had long forgotten, the beauty of instinct, of simplicity, of doing something not to prove a point, but to feel alive. For years he had aimed at targets with precision. For the first time he found someone who hit something far deeper, his soul. For her, life began to feel different too. The world, once a quiet tapestry of shells and waves, now seemed to hum with invisible possibilities. That single shot had awakened something within her, not ambition, but awareness. She began to see that sometimes destiny doesn't announce itself with clarity. It hides behind small moments, a random bet, a stranger's gaze, a fleeting choice. She didn't understand why their meeting mattered, but she could feel that it did. And that feeling lingered like the faint echo of a gunshot still reverberating through time. Years later, when she looked back on that day, she would remember not the applause or disbelief, but the stillness that came after, the quiet recognition that life had just changed direction. What were the odds that a girl picking up seashells would cross paths with a sniper chasing perfection? And yet, perhaps that's what destiny truly is, the meeting point between chance and purpose. Sometimes, the universe doesn't need grand signs to shift our lives. It only needs one moment of courage, one unexpected encounter, and one perfect shot to remind us that every step we take, even along a quiet shore, might be leading us exactly where we were meant to be.